This is the New York Sports Machine on WICR.
All right. Mike DeMurgis, along with Jersey Joe Archino here on a sad Wednesday in New York, Joe. Because the Yankees are out of the playoffs.
At least the football teams are doing a little bit better right now.
Yeah, the football teams are doing much better. The Giants seem to have things straightened out, but
yes.
Last night in the wild card game, the Yankees lost to the Astros 3-0, and let's face it, they didn't have a chance.
No.
They were completely cut down by the Astros, who are a younger, faster, more athletic team. And look, the Yankees have holes, and I don't know how they're going to fix them.
There's no question about it, and I think the biggest thing, all those points you just said, 100% correct. And I think the Yankees are just boring. You look at a team like Houston.
Oh, they're very, very boring. Last couple of years, the Yankees have been very hard to watch.
Yeah.
Even though they were in a pennant race this year, very hard to watch.
And I mean, it's one of those things where, at the end of the day, I want to root for who's going to be interesting, who's going to make my night more enjoyable to watch in the next round. And to be honest, that's the Astros. They've got the youth. They've got a lot of young talent. I'd rather see Jose Altuve than an old Carlos Beltran. I'm sorry. I think it's a more interesting product.
Well, I don't know if people at Major League Baseball really want to see the Astros against the Kansas City
people at Major League Baseball don't.
I mean, you're talking some real small TV
Absolutely.
markets. But to be honest with you, this isn't the Yankees of 2006, 1999, or 77, or even the early 80s. I remember working with Buck Martinez in 2006 when I was at XM, and he said to me, going to a Yankee game is like being on Broadway every night. And it's true. You had A-Rod, you had Jeter, you had Giambi. Wherever you looked, you had big names on the mound and in the field. And that's what it was. It was a Broadway play every night. Now you look at these guys, you don't think you're off Broadway. You think you're in, Iowa or something, watching a play trying to get to New York. And that's really what the Yankees have become. A very, very boring team. And let's face it, I know Tanaka pitched pretty good. He's not the guy that they thought they were getting. He's not, to quote Dennis Allen, he's not who they thought he was. Good performance overall, but not enough to get the job done.
Well, and I think that's one of the things, too, is I don't know if you could look across this roster and really circle one guy and say, this is your cornerstone, face of the franchise type guy. Now, do they have some young guys who are coming up and could be players? They do. But at the end of the day, they don't have that face that's so important to a franchise. Like, there's just no face.
And this organization and this franchise has had faces for over a century. So you bring up a good point. You look, meanwhile, the Mets, they have DeGrom and Syndergaard. Yep. Those are the faces of franchise. Went from David Wright to those two. It took them some time, but they've done it and they've turned it around. But the Yankees, they've got issues. Who's going to play first base next year? Do they try and deal Teixeira? Do they let Bird be the man? Is that the case? What are they going to do? They're going to try and get Judge in the outfield there. Ellsbury overall had a good year, but he faced injuries and he tailed off towards the end. A-Rod's 40 years old. You can't expect him to hit 30 home runs against last year.
No.
On the bright spot, you had Gregorius, who really came around.
Yes, for sure.
But they're outside of the bullpen and Gregorius. There weren't many bright spots, and I think you got to give these kids a chance to play. But they're being choked by Tanaka's salary, Teixeira's salary, A-Rod's salary, and Ellsbury's salary.
Massively being choked by. And it's one of those things, they did exceed my expectations. I didn't think that this was a playoff team at the start of the season. I really did not. Obviously, they lose in this wild card game, but still at the end of the day, I mean, you said it perfectly. It's all about the young guys. You've got to just cut loose these older players. Right now, it's all people want to see the young guys. They have young talent. That's what we kept screaming for. Look at the Mets right now. Why are the Mets in the position they're in? Because they took their time. They did their diligence. They built what they had to with the young players, and it's paying dividends for them now. That's what the Yankees have to do.
I'm all for the young talent, but I think the Yankees were too quiet at the trade deadline this year. They thought they had the division wrapped up, and look, the Blue Jays swoop in, and they get David Price. And they made the moves.
Game changer for them.
Game changer for them. The Mets made the moves. That was a game changer for them. You got to make moves. The Rangers made the moves to get Cole Hamels. You got to make moves at the trade deadline. You look throughout history. I remember in '96, the Yankees went and got Cecil Fielder at the trade deadline. Before that, they brought in Darryl Strawberry, who was with the team in '95. Back in '93, the Braves were way out of it. The Giants were so far ahead, and they brought in Fred McGriff, changed the franchise around for a few years. They were down 14.5 games, as I recall, and won the division from the Giants, and Barry Bonds swore he was going to haunt the Braves from his grave. So moves at the deadline are critical. They're crucial to teams. Sometimes they're a bust, but for the Blue Jays, the Mets, the Rangers, voila.
Oh, my God.
It worked out. And to me, to give up something, you better hope these guys are going to be something. Because David Price is a unique player.
He is.
He's the kind of guy you give up a bird for. You know what I'm saying? Or a judge for. And I think they missed the ball on this one.
See, I hear you totally. The only thing I think Cashman was so afraid to give up that young talent because he'd heard the press for so long saying that you can't be giving up all this young talent. Look at what the hole you're in now. It's because you went out and you shipped off all these young arms like Ian Kennedy back in his day and things like that, and moves like that after that. But I'm with you. I mean, when you have a chance at a guy like a Price, it's so hard not to gamble. Especially,
he's a unique player. That's the bottom line. He's a unique player. And if George Steinbrenner was alive, he would not be taking this lightly.
No.
He would be in everybody's face. Girardi should be fired. He's had enough chances to get something done, and he hasn't gotten it done. Cashman should be let go. Time to go. Time to really clean house altogether. Because Cashman did not have one of his finest moments the last couple of years.
No, I completely agree.
And this team has lost its gusto. It's lost its mojo. It's lost its mark. Since 2000, since they won the World Series, they're 5-7 at home. There's no lore. There's no mystique that came over from the old Yankee Stadium here.
There's not.
Since they got manhandled by the Rangers in 2011, this is a very weak imitation of the team in pinstripes.
I don't think it has the same brand power as it has had in a long time. I just don't think you look across Major League Baseball and you don't look at them the same way. People don't fear them the same way.
They did. And the old stadium had that character. And I remember I was covering the team for XM at that time, and the players would just come in and look at Yankee Stadium in awe, like they were looking at a cathedral. And it wasn't just the field they were looking at, the sounds, the smell of the stadium. It just had that aura about it, and it was very on top of you, and the noise was on top of you. Now you feel like you're in a shopping mall. That's what the new Yankee Stadium feels like.
It really does, and it just the thing is, there were so many questions at the start of this season. How many more are there going to be at the start of next season? I don't know. It could be an even more downward slope. I think we have a little bit better idea of the younger talent, but again, those older guys, the A-Rods, the Teixeiras with the big contracts. There's a lot of questions there.
A lot of questions there, and Chase Headley isn't worth the money that they gave him. Beltran did give some contributions, but it's not worth the money they gave him. Sabathia certainly. I forgot to mention him.
It's a total problem waste. In itself.
In all honesty, he should give back the money from this year and call it quits and give back the money for next year. Okay, I don't want to hear anything about this. Okay. You're basically screwing the fans and you're screwing the organization.
Yep.
Okay? You have no excuse.
I agree.
No excuse for doing what you're doing. All right? You can get all the help you want. You play for the New York Yankees, you're making $25 million a year, and you're going out binging.
Yep.
All right? You have all the resources in the world not to do what you did.
And again, do you
think he should return the money?
Does that say something about the Steinbrenner sons? I mean, would this have ever flown with the boss at the helm?
Oh, George would have called him out on it. No, George wasn't afraid of anybody. He'd call everybody out. He wasn't petrified of anybody. If the Yankees failed, he apologized to the fans, and it wasn't good enough. The new Yankee ownership, Hal and Hank. I wish Hank was more at the forefront. They're very passive. They're very corporate. The Yankees are boring.
Yep.
And I kind of wish that Donald Trump had bought the Yankees or the Mets to give us some excitement.
A little flair.
Because the Yankees are boring. I don't know who this team is. I really don't. This team has completely lost the flair. Completely.
I think the lack of identity is the biggest thing. It really is. There is no identity. And when you're the New York Yankees, that's really unacceptable. You can't not have an identity.
It's an outrage. Anyway, Mike DeMurgis along with Jersey Joe Archino for this Bronx Bombers radio segment. The season comes to a close. Made the wild card. But a lot of questions going into next year, and I wish the Steinbrenners would just forget about the luxury tax and blow up the payroll and spend $250 million and get the right people in here and combine that with the young kids. That's what they should do.
You got to do it. Look at what the Dodgers did.
Exactly. So Mike DeMurgis along with Jersey Joe Archino here for the New York Sports Machine.